Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and I'm very excited this morning to be joined by past HAR Chair and 2024 NAR Fair Housing Champion Award recipient, Shad Bogany. Welcome to the program, Shad.
Thank you so much, Christina. This is an amazing opportunity, and we're here to talk about fair housing. The month of April is fair housing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually 12 months a year, but this is the month that we hold out about fair housing and celebrate it and push it above everything else.
Absolutely. And as the award that you just won, congratulations, by the way, as the award that you
Thank
just
you.
won states, you are a fair housing champion here in Houston. You are one of three across the country that won that amazing award. And you can tell us a little bit about it here in a second. But we're just very, very glad to be able to have you on the program today to discuss fair housing this month with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into everything that I have for you today and the questions that we may get from our live viewers, Shad, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
I've been practicing real estate here in Houston for 40 years now, full time. I am past chairman of HAR. I'm also past chairman of the Texas Realtors. I'm also a past chairman of the MLS for NAR. And so I've had a lot of dealings with real estate. I sit on several nonprofit boards, Community Covenant Capital, Fort Bend Housing Fairness Finance Agency. I am the chair there. I'm also vice chair of the Houston Area Urban League Community Development. So I run deep when it comes to affordable housing and fair housing. I used to sit on Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs Board with
Mm.
tax credits and bond programs. So I've had a lot of experience when it comes to affordable housing.
Absolutely, and we thank you for all that work that you've done and continue to do. Let's dive right into it. What are some of the main fair housing challenges that you are currently seeing in the Houston area?
Well, I think some of the biggest challenges is that realtors just don't know that they're committing violations. They're speaking just as they have a conversation at the dinner table or out, and they don't realize some of the things they're doing or saying is against fair housing. And even though we've come a long way in fair housing from the original fair housing legislation of 1866 till today, we still have a long way to go, and there's evidence on it all the time and about it. And so I think the problem that we have with fair housing is that we should assume that everybody's okay with fair housing. It's green, it's
Mm-hmm.
money, it has nothing to do with any color other than green. But unfortunately, based on the way we were brought up, how we what we dealt with, who's been in our sphere of influence, our silos that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when it comes to people of color or handicap or sexuality, and we don't see those people, we assume that they may not be the person to live in this particular neighborhood or property.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, some of the latest statistics, actually, we got an update from the Kinder Institute last week that saying that 58% of Houstonians are renters. So, since we're seeing that, I know there's some fair housing issues around rentals. Will you tell us a little bit about that and what are some things that our members can be looking out for and how they can better serve clients and customers?
Thank you, Christina. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest issue in Houston is rental discrimination right now. And that bothers me more than anything else, considering that 58% of Houstonians rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a huge issue out there. People assume and take on that certain people are certain ways, and they blast the whole community based on that. And you can't assume that on any community. And so I would basically say that the biggest discrimination out there is rental. It starts off that I've had people call me and say, Shad, my client just got discriminated against. And these people don't look like me. They're calling me because they're representing people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had rentals turned down with 800 credit scores, people making six figures, and they were still turned down. And this is the key.
Mm-hmm.
When they turn you down, because the initial application, it doesn't say what you are. But when people send their driver's license over for the landlords to look at, all of a sudden, all the implicit bias, the prejudice, the racism all comes into play, that I
Mm-hmm.
don't want these people leasing my particular property. And what I found, it's not only the majority community, it's a mix of everybody. It could be
Mm-hmm.
minorities, it could be discriminating against other people. So we've got a huge issue here when it comes to rental housing and people not being able to rent places because who they look. And I could give you examples all day long
Mm-hmm.
of people calling me, asking me questions about fair housing. And so, how do we fix this? So, I do have solutions for any problems that we say. I think it should be required to get your license. It should be required that they take 2 or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when we do a class at the real estate schools, they may spend 15, 20 minutes about fair housing, maybe 30 minutes at max. If you're in my class, I'm going to spend a lot longer with it. But the issue is that we need to require it, because if it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't be required. And the
Mm-hmm.
thought is it's not necessary anymore. And so we have the Long Island Divide video that's come out in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
where as a realtor, I always knew this existed, but
Mm-hmm.
to actually see it on camera and see people doing it, and it didn't matter what race they were, they were doing it to everybody,
Right.
and it's sad. We've had some issues up in Denton County where we've had issues with vouchers, where this HOA said we didn't want anybody in our neighborhood renting on a voucher. So
Mm-hmm.
they passed a rule that owners of their own property, could not rent to people on a Section 8 voucher. And that's probably the most biggest discrimination, is
Mm-hmm.
dealing with Section 8 vouchers. So if you had had a voucher during the pandemic, you would have got your rent every day. You
Mm-hmm.
would have got every month. You wouldn't have not had any issues of not getting your rent. Your payments on your investment property wouldn't have been behind because
Mm-hmm.
your tenants wasn't paying. So there are some consequences to this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I am sharing with you that rentals are the biggest discriminations out there than I've ever seen. And if you got a Section 8 voucher, there are 29,000 people on the waiting list for
Mm-hmm.
Section 8 vouchers. I guarantee you, if I pull up and go to har.com and pull up which rental properties will accept a voucher, it's probably 10%
Yeah.
of
And
all
I want
the lists.
Yeah, and I want to dive a little bit more into some of the Section 8 and how we can better serve clients in that. I do want to just address, I had a question, a couple comments come in. Terry said, one of my agents was specifically told that the owner would not accept someone from a specific protected class. I'm assuming this is for a rental. She asked, what is the correct response as a broker? So what advice would you give to a broker whose agent comes up to them with that?
Good question. It happens all the time. What I would say is that your agent should tell the landlord or the owner that I have a code of ethics that I follow.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you hired me is because I have a code of ethics that I follow, and I will look out for your best interest. But I also got to look out for the interests of people who are coming to look at your property. And I don't think, if you're concerned about making the most money, I think you're hurting yourself. And if you can't change that rule, then I'm going to have to not list your property for rental. And
Okay.
so it's against the policy. Also, you could be charged up with that, with discrimination, be fined. And so it could create an issue for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just a comment here from Erica. She said, it bothers me too. My innocent renters get ignored. It's sad. We report it, but it still continues. And I think there's a key point in there that they are reporting it. Last week we had Danielle Bustamante on this program, who's with the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center, and that's a lot of what they do is they take in these reports and investigate and move forward. So please know that there are resources like the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center out there to support if you have clients that are experiencing issues like this. Another question about Section 8 that I see came in, which I'm going to get to in just a second. Terry just followed up with the agent is a buyer's agent, so how would I complain and to whom? So would you recommend reporting something like this to the, who would you recommend reporting this to, Shad?
I would recommend reporting it to the agency that you just met. I would
Mm-hmm.
also call HUD
Mm-hmm.
about it. The key is that we don't really need more rules. We just need to enforce the rules that are on the books.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we don't know where to enforce those rules. So I would call the HUD office, and I can assure you they will direct you in the right direction to enforce those particular rules. And some people do not know what the rules are on fair housing. So maybe when we're doing the listing agreement, we should bring a copy of the fair housing rules and give
Mm.
it to our landlords as part of the package. That may help us in that situation.
That is an excellent, excellent tip. So let's talk a little bit about Section 8. You mentioned it already, but I think there's a lot of confusion around it, and we can talk about that. And maybe some agents, I see it all the time on social media. How do I help somebody with a Section 8 voucher? So I think there's a lack of training there too. So how can agents better help their clients, whether it be tenants or landlords, with Section 8 vouchers?
If you are a buyer agent and you're representing, or leasing agent, and you're representing someone with a Section 8 voucher, I think I would call Section 8 voucher or go to their website and read up on the program and
Mm-hmm.
understand the program. Because some things you can say or put in your lease agreement or your application that could hurt you just based on what you said to the listing agent or put in the application.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, what I would do is the tenants still have to have a first month rent, first deposit. They still have to have those in place. Typically, on Section 8, the rent, the first month rent doesn't come to about 30, 45 days later on that end. I think you, if your tenant is leasing, is working, you need to put that in the acknowledgement that they're working. You need to let them know that this money is deposited in their account every month. They never have to collect it. The other thing I would inform my landlord is that these tenants wait for years to get on this list. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to be kicked off the list because they're not taking care of your property, not doing the right things for you. And so they're very particular. I will tell you this, Christina, it is harder to rent something in Houston on Section 8 versus purchasing something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my opinion, it is easier to work with a buyer buying a house
Mm-hmm.
where immediately, because I got a voucher, people are discriminating against me because they feel they're not going to get their payments. I'm a different type of person. We have a working poor here. People who work 40 hours a week every week cannot afford housing. And if
Mm-hmm.
you go to what some of the market rate apartments are, you're amazed. 2 bedroom, $1,800 a month. 3 bedroom, $2,200 a month. We in Fort Bend County, I am chair there, just approved a deal out in Bellaterra where we are going to make rents available at 60% of medium in rents in that area and to make things happen for people with rents. But how do you find out about that? It's really hard. So my thing is that if you're working with Section 8 vouchers, make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you complete your application, answer all the questions. Do they have a pet? Are they working? What is their income? And let me share this with you. With Section 8 vouchers, it depends on what zip code you're in.
Mm-hmm.
The voucher changes per zip code. So that's why it would be important to print out or ask your prospective tenant to give you the zip code amounts from where their voucher will work because it changes per zip code. And what I've been told over the weekend is that a tenant can't pay the difference. It cannot be the difference
Mm.
in the voucher. They have to go by what's on that voucher. Now,
Right.
what I will say, if they're working and the voucher only pays $800 of their rent, then they can pay the difference. But I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to open our minds, open our thoughts. And let me say this, it's we've got to get past the implicit bias where we just assume things about people, whether they're black, white, brown, yellow. We just assume things. And we've got to change that thought process. That's why it's important that Trek starts requiring people to take a class to get their license.
Mm-hmm.
And when we renew our license, make sure that they take the class to renew that license because it's a lot of implicit bias out here.
Yeah, absolutely. A follow up question here from Mitch Rainey. He's asking, does the landlord need to be approved?
No, but the house needs to be in good condition.
Mm-hmm.
So the house needs to be in good condition. So if the broken window there or the plumbing leaking, they want people in sanitized, fair housing. They want them in good housing. They want them in health and safety where there's no issues there. And those are typical things that have to be done because the house is inspected
Mm-hmm.
by the housing authority. So they have to meet certain guidelines, but it's health and safety. It's good common sense. It's nothing no different than what you would want to do or live in if you were renting a house.
Very good. Another question here from Martha. Can the voucher be used for buying a house versus renting?
I've done it. I've done it. I've done it. I do it all the time. And I will tell you, you can because you can't discriminate from a person where their income comes in. So the fair housing allows that banks can use the voucher as income. And so let me share this story with you right quick.
Yeah.
I've got a gentleman who was on a VA voucher through HUD. His voucher was $2,500, $3,000 a month. He was a disabled vet. He had two disabled kids. And he said, Shad, I want my property. He came to me to rent with his voucher. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, what do your credit looks like? He said, my credit's great, but I'm a disabled vet.
Mm-hmm.
We put him in a $450,000 house because his voucher picked up that amount of money because he wanted to live out in the Champions area. He wanted his kids to be in a great school. And so that's where we put him. The voucher pays the
Mm-hmm.
uh, the monthly payment and he makes up the difference. Now, let me share this with you with some of the people who are thinking, oh, here we go with another government program. Let me share this with you. Most people get off the voucher within 5 years of them getting on the voucher
Mm-hmm.
and home ownership. The reason for that is because they're stable. They're getting better jobs now. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just a hand up. And everybody says pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but you have to have some boots to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so this is a way to do it. So the voucher program works for purchase. They pay it up to 15 years on this program. But the key to the program, you got to get the right lender. If you're working with a voucher, the first question I'm going to ask, have you done any of these? How many have you done? Very similar to any down payment assistance program. And so when you combine the different programs that the county and city of Houston has, and so I've done several of them. The most rewarding sale I ever did was a lady with 5 kids, and this was many years ago out in Crosby, Texas. And when we went to closing, her child ran up to me. One of the 5 kids said, I have my own room now. I
Oh,
have my own. That almost made me cry because that's what it's all about. People appreciating the work that we do.
I love that. Thank you so much. Um, just to verify, there was a question that came in about the vouchers again. Is the voucher the same for renting versus buying? So,
Yes,
is
it is.
it? Mhm.
It's a difference. The rental part of the voucher is used to pay the rental amount
Mhm.
because people might not be ready right now. The other part of it is used to pay the part of the monthly payment. And
Mm-hmm.
so it can be used either route. The key questions that you ask your tenant or prospective buyer is that, are you have good credit? Do you have any money saved? And those items, and if they say, yes, I have money saved, I have good credit, have you ever thought about using your voucher to purchase? So they may need
Mm-hmm.
to go back to the caseworker and ask the caseworker to see if they qualify for that particular program when it comes to the voucher. Guys, it works. We've
Mm-hmm.
done 4 or 5 of these this year on
Excellent.
vouchers, and they're being done all over. People are learning. I'll give you an example. The city of Dallas is finna build 1,000 homes, and they're making provisions that some of their voucher users can use to purchase these particular homes up in the city of Dallas.
Mm.
So it makes it affordable. And what I'm saying is that they get off the voucher. They did a survey. Most of these people get off the voucher in 5 years.
Yeah.
It's just a hand up.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. Going back to procedure, you mentioned discrimination and renting. That sometimes will come up once they see an identification, right?
Yeah.
Can landlords decline prospective tenants without a social security number? No ITIN? Is it discrimination to require social security numbers?
I don't believe so, but I will tell you that where I'm seeing discrimination at really big in this rental side of it is credit scores.
Mm-hmm.
So now the landlord has gotten smart. If you don't have a 720, 750 or up credit score, 650, and I tell people all the time, if I had a 750 credit score, why in the hell am I renting? And that so you that's the new discrimination now. They're
Mm-hmm.
using credit scoring. So if you've got a 600 credit score, it's going to be hard for you to rent
Mm-hmm.
somebody to a place here in Houston. And I'm seeing it all over, especially the newer homes. A lot of the and let me share another discrimination is going. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of these institutional investors who built these whole neighborhoods for rentals, they don't take Section 8 vouchers at all.
Right.
Unless they just change, I've been told that they don't take them at all. And
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to put people in those particular properties. I don't do a lot of Section 8 rentals. So what I did do the other day, I had a property out north side. I put in that I would take a Section 8 voucher. Would you believe that my phone rung 24/7? Because people don't have a lot of choices there, even though there are lots of rental houses that are available to them out
Okay.
there.
I do want to mention we're getting a lot of questions, and we'll get to as many as we can, but we're getting a lot of questions around Section 8. And I do want to mention we actually have a Texas Affordable Housing Specialist designation course scheduled for later this month. April 22nd, I believe, is the date. I had the opportunity to sit in on that class a few years ago just as a staff person, and I learned so much. So TAHS, Texas Affordable Housing Specialist designation, I would strongly recommend taking a look at that class. They talk about Section 8, but they also talk about a lot of other programs that can help you when you're working with your clients and customers. Just wanted to quickly touch on a couple more. You mentioned that you've closed about 4 or 5 of those just this year alone. Diana's asking about how long does it take to close those?
I've closed them in 30 days.
Okay.
The tenant or the prospective buyer has to do what they need to do. You've got to have a good loan officer. And that is the key, is the loan officer. The loan officer understanding the program. And if they don't understand the program and you are their guinea pig, you're in for a long ride.
Okay.
So the house still has to be in good condition. You don't, I think the easiest deals are the new homes when it comes to those, because you don't have to worry about any repairs. Because if they come out and inspect the property and say these repairs need to be done, you have to do those repairs. It's
Mm-hmm.
not an option on those repairs. They don't want these people to start at a deficit going in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important. I think the best buyers are best homes are new homes for buyers. Excuse me.
Okay. Very
I'm
good.
getting old. I'm having senior moments as I speak.
No, you're doing great. Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions coming in, and I still have some questions that I want to ask you as well. Before we move away from Section 8, and we can always revisit if there are more questions, but Shiva's asking, isn't it against fair housing to not accept Section 8?
Nope, it's not. Let me share this with you. The most vulnerable people are renters because there's really not a lot of rules to protect them. That's how the neighborhood in Denton County was throwing 87 families out
Mm-hmm.
of housing. There's not a lot of rules. The ECOLA does not apply to them. So there's no way. And let me tell you, then the landlord says you got to have a 650 credit score. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he's just disqualified them already. Most people who rent don't have, or they would be purchasing a
Mm-hmm.
home. So the Jim Crow has put on a new hat. It's called credit scoring.
I see. All right. So you mentioned the idea of implicit bias a little bit earlier. Um, can you just briefly explain for us what is implicit bias? How can we become more aware of it, and how can we overcome it?
Let me give you an example of implicit bias. I'm working with somebody of Asian descent. I just assume that they want to live in Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't tell me they wanted, they gave me their criteria, but I don't have any houses in Chinatown right now or in this part of town. That's implicit bias.
Okay.
Somebody who's Hispanic. Oh, I want to live on the East End. Oh, they want to live on the East End. You should be making decisions based on what their criteria is and let them make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So implicit bias is a human nature thing. I've had to catch myself sometimes assume because I'm assuming that people want to be certain areas and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for fair and good, safe housing and good schools is what's driving people. And it's unfortunate that we assume things and it could happen to anybody. Implicit bias does not have a color on it. It could be anybody.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned some changes that you'd love to see, at the at Trek in regard to getting licensed. Do you foresee any legislation that could help with fair housing?
Well, I think one of the things could be that, and the governor's already decided that he's going to work with the institutional investors buying up all these houses so people can't buy them, they have to rent them. So he's going to address this in the next legislature. I think there ought to be some way where the landlord can approve somebody, and after he's approved them and signed everything, maybe we shouldn't ask for the driver's license. I don't know. It's kind of a gray area because I do
Mm-hmm.
want to know who I'm renting, but the facts should lay it out in the application
Right.
who I am, what my credit report looks like, what my background looks like when you do the background report. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we need to eliminate them asking for the driver's license because it is where the discrimination starts from the beginning, right up front. Um, I think really knowledge is really the key. We've got to educate our members more. The people that are on this broadcast today, to me, I'm preaching to the choir. There are a whole lot of people that should be on this broadcast that are not on this broadcast that do it every day. And that's what made Long Island Divide so important. It actually showed how our members are handling people. And so I'm one of the I won't say I'm one of the very few people, but I've experienced discrimination. Went
Mm-hmm.
up to a house with my client. The lady opened the door, told me that I knew you were coming, but I didn't know it was you. No, I'm not willing to let you see my house. And that was the most embarrassing thing. So it's still, guys, it's still happening out there. It's something that's ingrained in our society, but we can change it if we acknowledge it and put things in place to help it. And one of the things I will say, if you're sitting around and you hear somebody say something that discriminatory against someone, say that's not right. All
Mm-hmm.
people are not like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have sometimes when you're sitting around the dinner table and Uncle Joe makes a comment, you should say, Uncle Joe, that's not right. I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced it. I have friends, and we've got to start being friends with everybody. We start to open our sphere of influence and bring people in.
Hmm.
People normally discriminate when they're uncomfortable, when they don't feel comfortable about somebody. And we've got to change that. So it's a human experience. And I hear people of color discriminate against other people of
Hmm.
color. So it's a situation where I think we've got to start talking about it and stop putting it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
What did I tell you in the beginning? The 1866, there was a fair housing law written, and it didn't get really fixed to 1968,
Hmm.
over 100 years later.
Yeah.
So, and still there was discrimination going on, and they've been adding people to the protected class.
Hmm.
Now you're seeing transgender people added, and who your sexuality, and it still goes on.
Yeah.
And just last year, Christina, they had an Asian lady selling condos out in Katy, told a black African American buyer that you wouldn't be comfortable here. This is
Hmm.
just for Asian community. This was last year. So
Hmm.
that shows you that we're having some issues here, and I believe that realtor did not understand fair housing, or she wouldn't have never said it.
Right.
What she wouldn't have told them what she did, and repeatedly said it on tape in front of them, letting them know. And of course, they filed a lawsuit against her.
Yeah. So, speaking of on tape, you mentioned the Long Island divided investigation, and we can share a link in the comments. I actually interviewed the lead investigator a couple years ago on this show. So during that, and you can actually see it for yourself. But during that, they did record. They had actors go in of all different backgrounds, origins, ethnicities, etc. And it was all recorded, and some
Mhm.
people were treated fairly and evenly, and some were treated completely different. And what you just mentioned is steering, right? And there was many cases of steering that were uncovered during that investigation. So my question to you was, do you feel the lessons learned from that investigation are still applicable today and applicable in Houston? But from the example you just shared, it sounds like the answer is yes.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
still think there's some issues out there. And I think until you video people and you see it, I know in my community, we always know it was out there.
Hmm.
But we just didn't have any evidence. And I think one of the key things about Long Island Divide, when you watch it,
Hmm.
this is real key. The people that were being discriminated against didn't know they were being discriminated against.
Right.
That's how well it's been tapered down, put in a suit with a tie on it, or dress really nice. Oh, that person was so friendly to me.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have never known. I thought they asked everybody for a credit report before they went
Right.
out showed houses. That's how good it has become. So my feeling is that yes, it's something we should do, continue to fight for. And one of the things that I would suggest that everybody do who's on this broadcast with me today, if you really want to know why Christina and why we have a fair housing month, and Christina's doing this broadcast, read the book by Richard Rothstein, The
Mm.
Color of Law. If you that should be required reading to get your real estate license, because once you read that book, you're gonna realize, damn, this is how it was.
Hmm.
This is why the difference. I now know why grandma's house was across the tracks. Now
Right.
I understand why all the housing for minorities around garbage plants and chemical plants and all of that stuff. Read The Color of Law. Get
Hmm.
it on Amazon. You can get it. I've done it 3 times. I've interviewed Richard Rothstein on my radio show.
Hmm.
It is just amazing when you read it and think that things have gotten better. And that's why I'm saying when better is possible, good is not enough. We've gotten better, but we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we just have a few more minutes with you, Shad, but I do want to ask, and you've already shared some great nuggets of advice, but specific advice that you can give our members in regard to fair housing. And I'd love to hear advice for really all levels, an agent, a team leader, a broker, manager. What advice do you have for our members in regard to fair housing?
I think I would start off if I am a broker running an office, I'm a team leader. I'm also managing other agents. I would think that maybe you need to do fair housing in your sales meeting.
Mm.
And if you do everything online, maybe you need to do an online class on fair housing and not required, because it does take time to sit and do it. But when you have your agent's attention, you need to use that time wisely and fair housing. And the reason it's so important, because it's about earning money. It's
Mhm.
about green. And how many people, when they get that Section 8 call and don't even think to ask them whether or not they can purchase a home. The
Mhm.
moment they mention Section 8 voucher, they turn their nose up or say, I can't help you. So I think if I'm managing a company, managing a team, managing agents, or a real estate broker owner, I'm going to require in our sales meeting, maybe once every time we have a sales meeting, we bring up one of the fair housing protected classes and talk about it. We really need to do it. Maybe when we have in our big awards deal where we've sold so many houses and everybody's getting awards, maybe do a blip it about fair housing. And so I just think you can't put your head in the sand and think things are all right. It's not. And
Mhm.
I will tell you, and when it gets to luxury homes, there's a problem there too,
Mhm.
unless your name is Michael Jordan or Charles Barkley or Akeem Olajuwon, and say, well, it's okay. I got Akeem Olajuwon listening, living next to me. But if Shad Bogany moves in, I'm putting my house up for sale. And,
Right.
and, and let me share this with you. When it comes to, the only person can lower your value of your home is you, not the
Mhm.
person that lives next door to you. Those are the things can lower your value. If your schools go down, your values will come down.
Mhm.
You've got to keep in mind it is a mental thing, and we assume that because somebody of color moved in next door, that my values have gone down.
Mhm.
And so it's really not that. So my thing is that if you see fair housing being unfair housing going on, report it, call HUD, tell your clients how to do it. FHA is real big on it. We just need to enforce the rules about fair housing.
Thank you. And what about for those brand new agents who, because somebody made a comment earlier that they may just not, they probably just don't know. They're making comments and they truly don't realize what they're saying, or they hear a comment from a client or customer and, maybe ignore it, maybe try to overlook it. What advice do you have for those brand new agents that are trying to close those first couple of deals?
You know, I don't. The advice is that them to go back when they went to their school of choice to learn about to get their license, go back in that chapter and read up about fair housing.
Okay.
That's what would be my suggestion. That's why I am saying Trek needs to step up.
Mm-hmm.
Trek needs to make this decision. They got us taking classes for everything else. Why can't we have to get our fair housing done by having a 2 or 3 hour course?
Right.
Maybe that is what we need to do. That's how you stop the bleeding. Some of these people you're never going to fix, but you can stop the bleeding with these new agents by making it required to
Mm-hmm.
be done. And when you are an agent looking for an office, maybe you ask your broker, what's your thoughts on fair housing? Do you do anything for Fair Housing Month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you talking about it? What are you doing about fair housing in your company? And a lot of companies now are doing things online. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, you don't meet people, you don't see people as much. And so my thoughts there is that you've got to bring it up. And management, even if you don't meet with your people every day, everything's online, do a class on fair housing. We
Mm-hmm.
need to take it, because what you're doing is stopping your agents from making more money. You're hurting your company in not having increased sales, because in the city of Houston alone, only 30% of African Americans own homes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge gap to increase. In the Hispanic community, it's somewhere in the neighborhood about 45% um, own homes. But in the city of Houston, now one thing I'll share with you about housing,
Mm-hmm.
and Christine, and this is, I was doing something research on my radio show. The city with the most highest number of minority home buyers is Sugar Land,
Mm-hmm.
87%. Second, Pearland. It's
Mm-hmm.
in the low 80s. The other one was Allen, Texas, up in the Dallas area. And number 4 on the list was League City.
Mm-hmm.
These 3 cities in our local area have the highest home ownership rate for minorities. And I think that's due to the diversity in this city of Houston that we live in. So
Mm-hmm.
I think somebody's getting the message because
Yeah.
people are buying houses in those areas. We just got to be able to get it in the city of Houston, get
Mm-hmm.
that message done.
So, on the subject of education that you mentioned, how can our members learn more about fair housing from HAR and NAR? Now, I already mentioned the affordable housing. We actually have a few other classes, a bias class that's later today, but being offered later this year as well. We have not talked about Fair Haven. Can you tell us about Fair Haven? And we can share a link to it in the comments.
Fairhaven is a free class and it's done put on by NAR. I've taken this particular class. I learned a lot just understanding myself, and it talks about implicit bias in it. I'm actually taking the class today at HAR, and I think we need to, I think having it just for April is too much. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we need to have it every quarter, have classes available for it. The other class I'm taking that I have to take on fair housing, I've got to go to San Antonio to take it. I'm doing it online, and it's costing me $130 to do it. Where you guys are offering it $30, but I'm teaching that day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think offer the classes, make it available. When we do orientation, mention it in the orientation. I just think we need to talk more about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys are, and I say you guys, HAR is doing something about fair housing every week this week,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate that. But I think we just need to talk about it and understand it. And I would probably say bring on a person who manages rental property and talk to them and ask them about fair housing and how do they make decisions based on who they're going to rent to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think really important when you meet with that landlord, you need to let them know about fair housing and that it's the code of ethics violation and they're costing them money. And let me
Mm-hmm.
say this, there are a whole lot of people who have, what's the word, who doesn't do vouchers, they have good jobs, and they tear up property when they rent them and walk away and get evicted. We know a whole, so
Mm-hmm.
it ain't just people working poor that's doing it. Everybody, it's spread it across the spectrum. So my thoughts are HAR, keep doing what you're doing, but maybe do a fair housing class once a quarter and
Mm-hmm.
of some sort. And I think the Fairhaven guys, I did Fairhaven about 2 weeks ago because I didn't have to do it for the award, but I'm an NAR director and it is required that we do Fairhaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself that I got through with the course, why did I wait so long? Because I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was fair. So I don't need the class, but I learned some things in this particular class, and I hope to learn some more this afternoon.
Excellent. Well, just a couple comments I wanted to share. Noemi said, "Wow, thank you. It's all about getting educated and well informed to better serve our clients." Couldn't agree more. HR's Executive Vice President Renee Galvan said, "Thank you, Shad, for sharing your experience and congratulations on being named NAR's 2024 Fair Housing Champion. Well deserved." And of course, we shared this at the beginning, but for anyone who missed it, we're very thankful to Shad for being able to join us today on the heels of winning this amazing award for all of the work that he has done and continues to do in the fair housing space. So truly, truly, we appreciate your time today, Shad.
Thank you for this amazing opportunity, Christina and HAR. Thank you for all your support over the years. And let's keep it going. Let's have fair housing. It's 12 months a year. It's not just April. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, we are keeping the fair housing conversation going next week. We will have HAR's diversity and inclusion consultant Tracy Brown on the program to really keep this conversation going in regard to implicit bias and how we can all better serve our clients and customers. So thank you again for your time today, Shad. Have a good week,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye bye.